Hello, welcome back to All Gathered Up, the show that runs parallel alongside with the Great British Sewing Bee. And we look at skills and techniques that come up and then go into them a bit in more detail because we've got the time to do that. Because you know what the Sewing Bee's like, boom, in an hour, they've gone through everything and we're like still catching up sometimes with what did they do there? Well, we can tell you exactly what they did there. And because we have Carol Elaine, Master Tailor Couturier, as always, guiding us through some of those techniques. Good evening, Carol. Good to see you again.
Good to see you in the warm glow of early summer lights, Stuart. Look
Isn't
at
it
you.
just coming
Fantastic.
through? Week 6, we've had 5 weeks. 5 weeks have been and gone. We're now into the second half of the series. Week 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So that means we're getting close to like the bit where the quarterfinals and the semi-finals. But we're at week 6 and we're at Kids Week. Well, some people love it, some people not so, but there is something special about seeing those dinky little clothes, though, isn't there?
I love sewing children's wear. It's so satisfying. It's because it takes a shorter time to make things, and you can cut corners a little bit, and the garments get built so fast, and it just satisfaction, almost immediately.
I'm liking the sound of that you can cut corners. Good. Well, and you've made many a garment I've seen. You've got some pictures here to show everyone. Let's take a look. Everyone, look at some of these clothes that Carol has made for little people over the years. Tell us about this one, Carol.
Well, for those of you who love your classical music, this is Stephen Isserlis. He's one of the finest cellists in the world. And I made his tail suit, which you see there. One thing I would point out is you can see that the arms are quite long. Well, this is because, when you play the cello, your arms are lifted and so
yes,
you
they're bent a lot. Yeah.
That's right. So you want to make sure you have a long reach and then the sleeve doesn't ride up too much. So I made Stephen's shirt and bow tie and tail coat and trousers. And then when I delivered it, I surprised him with this set of a romper suit, which was a built-in tails for Gabriel, his son. And that would have been about 25 years ago. So, and this was wonderful. They loved it. They called their photographer in, and the wonderful Peter Mountain, who shot a lot of classical musicians in the 90s, when I had a company called the Concert Store, brought this wonderful classical plinth in, and Gabriel hopped up on top, and what you see is just an enchanting photograph.
Isn't it just? Oh, wonderful. And then we've got this to see. Look at these two, everyone. Tell us about these two.
Right. This was a bride that came to me, and she wanted an Elizabethan dress and overjacket. So we started with the dress, and she wanted this elaborate strap, which she had seen in a costume. And it's this ruched, yes, with a stay underneath it and a double row of top stitching to keep everything in place.
Yeah.
And then again, we talked about, well, they have a little girl who was just over a year old, and we just started to talk about what Cecily was going to wear, and I said, well, leave it with me. And so when she came for her final fitting, I had this. And so the bib on the outer edge of the bib has the same detail that
beautiful
the bride had on her straps. And then I backed the bib with the little girl was teething early, so I backed it with waterproof fabric. So
good thinking.
So it could be cleaned. Yeah.
Oh,
and it didn't
wonderful.
Go into the, it
and then look at this delightful knittle number, everyone. You're like, oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Worldwide map.
Isn't that gorgeous? That is a lovely fabric, and I was so happy to find that. I got it on Etsy, actually. And we have a lot of friends in Japan. Mike, my partner, travels there 3-4 times a year, and it's where his work is based. A little girl called Hibari, which means skylark.
Oh, beautiful.
And I made her this. Isn't that a pretty name? And so, and Hibari chan is, I think, 2. And I wanted to show her the map of the world, obviously, in this romper suit, but also I wanted to point out where she lives and where
Oh,
we live in London and where I
oh.
came from.
So
So,
you've got these 3 different sections which you've chosen, and I've
yes.
got a close up here. If I press my buttons right, let's get rid of that. So that's the top part. Look at that, Tokyo.
So
That's
there's where Hibari-chan and her parents live. Yep.
oh, and then you've got
And
you.
this is me. I hail from Detroit, Michigan. That's that.
Wonderful. And
And
then the
and
other
then
where you
then
good
our
old
home here in London. So,
and
clothes tell a story, and
yeah,
clothes can educate. They can raise questions, and for children are fascinated with that. Um, and so it gives you something to talk about.
absolutely. And like you said last week, which I think is a delightful term, and many of the comments in the video last week said, oh, I love that term, painting with fabric. I think you said halfway through.
Yes, yeah,
Well, in a kind of a way,
yes,
you have painted, you've put things together to be able to
mhm,
then tell a story with. It's delightful.
absolutely. Yep. Well, so
So,
I would say
go on.
a couple of things about sewing for children is that we tailors study anatomy. And we study proportions and everything. And the thing about children is, which is interesting, is they're about half as tall. If you have an adult, which is 8 heads tall, and then you have a girl or a boy, they're about 4 heads tall. The difference being that with a child, their necks are quite short compared to our necks grow as we grow, and also our legs grow in proportion with our torso. But
Wow.
when we're children, our torso is out of proportion with our legs. It's taller than our legs are. So if you're trying to get, the lengths right of things, often you make what looks like a in proportion dress, and then it on a toddler it'd be way too long because their legs are quite short.
Okay.
And you want to get shape in, but
Yeah.
oftentimes you have the chest and the waist measurement are the same. Sometimes chest, waist, and hip are the same. They're
So,
cylindrical little
yeah.
people. Yeah. So you have to work. You just got to work around that, and I think that's really interesting. Is to understand the proportions as we grow, and how we can use those
Absolutely.
proportions.
And that did come through on some of the chatter and analysis on the program. They did talk about that briefly, didn't they? So it's
Mm-hmm.
nice to
Mm-hmm.
reinforce that for everyone and be able to understand that. But one skill that came up several times and was certainly asked for, I think I said to you earlier, let me check my messages because I didn't have time to actually then get it into the chat. Who was it that said, um, let's have a look. It was Judy. She goes, oh, please, Carol, can you give tips on applying bias binding for seam finishing after
Mm-hmm.
last night's episode? Well, Carol was already on it as well because it was, it is a skill that you use a lot of the time in dressmaking and couture work. I know I do a lot of binding for quilt work, but I'm sure you're doing some sort of binding in couture work nearly all the time, aren't you?
You do. You use bias sections a lot. If you're making piping, or if you're, let's say, you're half lining a bespoke jacket, you're going to bind all the seams. And then you just, working with bias does come in handy. Making rouleau,
Yeah.
turning rouleau. We saw that the most unfair part of the challenge, I thought, was making a thin belt loop and having to turn that in terry cloth. That was
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah,
That was
and,
really
and
mean.
and let's reinforce that because when they were judging Fauve, good old Fauve, with some of her comments, Patrick, as you were just saying, there's our belt, and we've got all these little loops for the dressing gown that they had to turn the right way out. And Patrick said on I think the edge of her belt, one of the points wasn't fully pointed out, and she went, yeah, good luck with that, that took an hour. And it's
Yes,
like,
exactly.
oh,
Yeah.
That was some
Well,
criticism for such a specific skill, which if you've got not much time, then actually pointing the points out in that belt is probably going to be the thing that gets dropped. As you say, cut a corner. That's the thing I would drop in order to be able to finish my garment.
And why even bring that up? There's
Yeah.
37 pieces in that, right? Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it was a bit ridiculous. It was a huge challenge. It was such a big ask to do that and to get everything in line and to work with that cloth. I think that was a bit of a stretchy terry. It wasn't as thick as some terry cloths, you know, or towelings. I think that was a bit kinder, but everybody had trouble with that.
Yeah.
You know, turning the belt was difficult enough, but turning the loops.
Yeah, I was saying to Tig earlier, I think I loved that challenge. It was delightful. I could imagine many a home sewer wanting to make that for their little one. It was fun to do. Easy to access, but if they were doing that, would they have put all those loops? Would they have just done one rope sort of belt bit and not worried about the detail there? I think they could have perhaps changed that, because as you say, that was a lot to do in 4 hours, wasn't it?
I think if I was in that competition, I would have made a double turn on that, pressed it into shape, and just did a slip stitch, and no one would have known.
Oh.
And I would have wasted no time at all turning it out. I'm talking about the belt loops. Honestly, that was so tricky, and everybody had such a time with it.
Absolutely. Well, let's then answer those questions for Judy and many others out there with binding, because it came up several times. Tony Beanie had never, I think he said he'd never done it before. And it is, if you've never done it before, it is going to be alien to you and a little bit odd on what you're doing. And then some got it slightly twisted and so forth. So we thought, right, Carol, give us the detail on it. So take it away, Carol, about bias binding and enclosing that raw edge.
Sure thing.
Oh, look at that terry towel in there.
Okay, so this is a very thick washcloth, and here's a piece of bias binding. Now this is satin. I generally use satin versus cotton because the color stays true, and also it's less temperamental than the cotton. So if you haven't seen, here's how you install it. Okay, you open up your binding. And you're going to sew in that ditch.
That first one?
Yeah, this first ditch. But you're going to sew, not in the ditch, you're going to sew just a little bit outside it toward this edge. Okay?
Well, I've already learned something already.
Yes. The reason you do that is you need as much turning as possible. You need as much width to turn it as possible. So let's just see how this works. Okay, I'm going to put it in the machine. Now it's very thick. You could use a walking foot, but as I said last week, I've lent all my domestic equipment out to students, so I don't
do the
have
best you
anything
can.
at the moment. There you go. So I'm going to sew this. Not going to stretch the binding. I'm not going to feed it in. I'm sewing flat, right? And I'm sewing just to the right of the ditch.
Yep.
Okay, that's enough to get going. And now, let's turn the work there. So there you are. You can see this. You can see the crease now. Let me just lift that up. You can see the crease. I haven't borrowed from the crease. There's a nice flat edge there, folded edge. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you turn it around. And then you want to pull this around, and then you're going to top stitch.
Oh, I see.
This edge here. Okay, you're going to top stitch this edge here. Now I'm going to encourage you to use pins for this. Okay, now let's see if I can explain this.
Carol, can you just go back? Sorry to interrupt. Can you just go back? Can I see the sewing line? Can you show us the sewing line? Just because I lost where... Oh, right. Oh, I get you. Oh, there you go, audience. Right. Okay, that's perfect. Keep it there. So you can see... Oh, go back the other way. That's it.
Yeah.
So you can see the sewing line there is just outside the crease. I get you. And now what have you done? You moved you then pull the rest of that fabric out, that bias over, did you?
Yes, that's right. So you let this edge fold back,
Yeah.
okay? And then you turn it around. You
perfect.
go over your stitching line,
Yeah.
and then you bring it round to this side.
Oh, look at that. And then you've got a lovely neat edge of
So,
bias. I
yeah.
get you. Yes.
Yes. Now, with your pins, take your pin. Can you see this now?
Yes, perfect.
Put it in this folded edge and draw it a little bit towards yourself. Okay?
Cool. Yeah.
I'm going to do another one.
Okay.
Take your pin, put it in about a 1/16 of an inch, pull it a little bit toward you.
So you're pulling it kind of tight. So you're the bias.
It tight,
so the bias is really filling up the edge. Because you don't want you want the terry to go right up to the edge of the binding, don't you? You don't want a hole or a space.
That's right.
Yeah.
You want this seam allowance to go right in the middle of this, okay?
Brilliant. Yeah,
and
yeah.
To make sure that and it's biased, so it's going to stretch, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've put the pin in about at 1/16 of an inch. I'm just going to pull it a little bit toward me and then set the pin again. Let's do another one. Pin in at 1/16 of an inch, pull it toward yourself, and then set your pin. Okay, so that's what it looks like.
Beautiful.
There we go.
Yeah, that's great, Carol. Like and look at that lovely. Yeah.
Okay, now let's sew it.
Good luck.
And this,
Good luck.
I know, it's
live.
It's very, very thick. Now you can use this hand right here.
Yeah.
To encourage it over. Okay, your machine is going to do the work. Now, I don't like to run over pins. I do on the sewing bee all the time. But you can use this hand here. Yeah, to encourage. And you're just going to pick a point on your presser foot so that you know that you're catching this bias binding in. So
just tell me where are you actually looking? Are you looking at your needle and the gap to get your...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the needle and where it lands.
Okay.
And I know that the camera angle that we have here is not perfect.
No, that's all right. We can see though. Look at that, everybody. Yeah. Look at that. Yeah,
so there we are.
Yeah.
Now, what's happening on the other side is you have a row of stitching. Let's see, which is about here. But that's all right. That's okay. You're just binding a seam.
So that's...
no one's going to...
No, that's hidden in the terry toweling. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hidden in the terry toweling. So, see, in fact, in my bobbin, I have red thread so that it doesn't show here. And on the top thread, I have a navy.
Yeah, so we can see
it.
Brilliant.
So that we can see that, so that you can all see the top stitching, and then this one is hidden. So there you are. There's your binding. There's your binding. You open it up. You're going to sew just to the other side of this stitch toward the edge.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what technically is that? Is that technically that each fold, is that a quarter of an inch?
It's a big quarter. It's a small centimeter. I think this is three quarters of an inch binding.
Wow.
I don't know what it is in millimeters.
Oh, that's right. No, I think most people it's done in inch, isn't it, in the fabric world? So
yeah.
And you can get different sizes, of course, can't you?
You can. Now, I wanted to show you a couple of other things.
Yeah, please do.
When you're working with awkward fabric and you have to bind them, you sew your seam, which is this red line here. That's your seam, okay?
Oh, okay.
And I've sewn this at about a half an inch. And then, in order to control your fabric, just one trick. I've sewn a second line here, just to keep the edges of the fabric together and under control. Okay, so nothing can... And then you can take your binding and, again, See, when you put your binding on here, you'll everything's under control. Can you see that?
Ah, yes. Because
So,
of that
okay, so
extra.
because of the extra seam that you have
Yeah.
there. Now these two edges are together. Now when you wrap that around and you pull it slightly, I've given myself a bigger seam allowance. So I'm binding kind of half of the seam allowance. Nothing's interfering with the actual seam itself.
See, brilliant.
Okay? So one trick is to just, again, secure the edges of your fabric, okay, before you bind.
Yeah.
And then the final trick, this is a little bit fussy, but I find it helpful sometimes to mark a gauge. So I've every 4 centimeters, which is too close. But I want to show you this so that you could extend that, and maybe you'd say every 12 inches, every
Oh, okay.
18 inches.
Yeah.
Make a mark, and I've made the mark in the on the underside of the binding,
Okay.
all the way through the binding. Then I fold it back, and I transfer the line so that it's all the way across the binding. Okay. Now, when you let's sew this on.
I love your machine and the sound of it. It's so quiet.
Oh, it purrs, doesn't it? Beautiful.
Yeah.
Now you can see this. That fold is very crisp. I haven't borrowed anything from that.
Wow.
Now, I'm going to turn this around, and now let's go back to our map that we made first of all.
Yeah, our lines. I can see them.
Okay, we
Yeah.
got a line here. I'm going to put a pin all the way through my work. All the way through.
So there's a line there,
All the way
a line
through.
there, a line there, pin, pin, pin.
Pin and pin. Then we're going to turn it over, and I'm going to make a mark here on the underside where the pin is.
Right.
Now remember, I'm using a very tight scale, but
Yes.
this would drive you crazy. This is too much. This is
Yeah,
too much.
okay.
But you might
Yeah.
do this every 12 inches. Okay. Now we take our pins out.
Take your pins
now
out
let's
because you've
turn
got
the
your
work
marks
over.
with your pen.
Yep. Yeah. So there we are. There's our line. There's our mark. Okay?
Ah.
So every 12, 18 inches, now when you put your pin in, you can mark this up perfectly. You're giving it a little bit of a... See, does that... I hope that makes sense to everybody at home.
Absolutely. It comes, we've talked
Yeah.
about this before, it comes down to preparation, doesn't it? Yes, it takes
Always.
another 10, 15, 20 minutes, but it will save so much time afterwards because you probably won't have to rip out, or you'll be able to sew it quicker and have more enjoyment over it because you've got the markings there, the preparation to help you.
Absolutely. What goes wrong is when you're just working freehand and you're folding
Yeah.
this over and it
Yeah.
starts to twist. You see that?
And that is what we
That's
saw
what happens.
so many times. The twisting, that's what a lot of the feedback, wasn't it, was, oh, your binding's twisted, your binding twisted, and that's how it twists then, isn't it?
Yeah, and sometimes this comes out if you're working too fast. That just
Yeah.
whoops, that just comes out, and there you've got your raw edge, which I think happened to Tony.
Yeah.
So he was actually, and then what a lot of people did is they thought, oh, the hell with it. I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to top stitch it down.
Yeah, yeah.
So a few of the contestants didn't bother wrapping it around. They just sewed it.
They did. Yeah, exactly
Sewed it
like
down.
that.
So then what you had is on the other side, you had a top stitch.
Yeah. Oh.
That's what happened to Mia.
Yeah.
That's what happened to, I believe, I forgot who else, but certainly happened to Mia.
And I can understand it. If you've got the matching thread, it's done its job, hasn't it? But it's
well,
not
it's
what was
not
asked
what they
for.
wanted them to do. And we
Absolutely.
heard that a couple of times. So
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, one
And
more thing, if I may, about children's wear.
of course.
Can I? So sometimes you can buy binding, and it's folded. It's a small one. It's about a quarter of an inch binding. But you might notice with this camera angle that one edge is shorter than the other, or
Absolutely. If you
less.
hold
One
it
edge is
there, yeah,
narrower than
yeah, that top one finishes, and then the bottom one, it's got a bottom lip. It's showing more, isn't it?
That's right. That's right. The idea there is if you sew onto the narrower side,
Yeah.
if you sew onto that side, it's automatically caught up in the other side. If you can see the pin
Right.
there.
Absolutely. Get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say you've got to make something really tiny. Okay?
Cool.
You've got a
This dear little
very
thing.
tiny bodice. A very tiny bodice. So you're working in very small spaces. And because it's small, you want something in scale. So might choose this smaller binding. And it's a bit tricky to work with, but if you're working with a mitered corner, okay, now this is the narrower side, so when we sew here, it's automatically going to be caught in from the back.
Yes, because there have been times when I've done my quilt binding or some binding, and I've sewn on the front, and when I turn it down, I can see some of my sewing hasn't, it's gone a bit off, and it's not caught, and you think,
Yeah.
oh, damn.
That's right. Now, you can prepare your binding. Let's go back to the larger binding. You can prepare it in that way. So you can prepare your binding ahead of time so that there's that same displaced.
Yes, that lip, I get you. Yeah. I give some
Yeah,
work.
okay. So you can,
If you could buy it already
yeah.
done, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so just remember, if you're mitering a corner, now let's see, how can I get that toward
Oh,
the
yeah,
camera?
we can see that. Oh, yeah, look at your corner there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're mitering a corner, and if it's a 90-degree angle, you just open up your piping, your bias binding, open it up, and crease that edge, and then when it comes
Fold.
over, yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
So there's that. That's one thing you can do, and you can do this on both sides, and you will have achieved that. The same purpose of that you did with this single
Yeah.
exercise where
And
you sew here and it catches in there.
And you did some beautiful. We both did actually, because I remember binding because they were doing quilt binding, and I do binding too. So we both did two wonderful tutorials last year. So I'll make sure I put them in the link below. You can go to Carol's YouTube page and have a look at those tutorials.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Stuart. Just one final thing about working in very small, tight spaces.
Yeah, of course.
If you want to bind a neck, same thing applies. You're going to sew on the narrower edge and catch it in on the bottom. But what I did to prepare this is I pressed this into a curve first.
Oh, wow. Look at
So
that.
you just put it on the iron, give it a tug, coax it around, and get it close to the shape that you want, and then you can just sandwich that in.
And the
so
beauty
you're not going to have a fight.
And that's the beauty of bias, isn't it? You can
it is.
Ease it and maneuver it and put it into the position you want with a bit of manipulation with the iron, of course.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Look at that.
Yes. So bias is lovely to work with. It's got great properties. So try it. Try some small samples. This would be a real challenge. And don't forget that you can mark off every now and then so that you know that you're not going to have that what they call puckering or the dragging in it. And use a walking foot if you can, and use a bigger stitch, because if you have to take anything out, you don't want to be unpicking forever and a day. Okay, so there we are.
Oh, Carol, that was brilliant as always. It just helps, and it's just nice to have these discussions because and I think that's why the show is really popular. People write in the comments they just like listening to sewing conversation and where it develops and what comes out and tips that comes out, because we don't often get the chance to do this, do we? And many of us don't often have sewing friends either to really have these lovely sewing conversations. So I know this show is really valued by people because of all those things.
Well, sewing it's solitary, really, for most
Yeah.
people, unless you're part of a group and everyone gets together and you're all working on a project and you've all got your
Yeah,
space.
that doesn't happen much, does it?
No, it doesn't. I must admit, I feel sorry. We've got a lovely workroom full of people who are getting along very well, and to see them cutting this on the floor, you know, on
Yeah,
their hands and knees, cutting
yeah.
things. And I don't think everyone has a proper cutting table, and
No,
so just if you can, just
it
kit
would.
yourself out a proper sewing room. It's
Well, it would show what's really needed. And I suppose the reality is that some of us may be doing it at home on our floor, but if we could have the space and have the table, it would be good to look up to that to see what you could have, and what we could aspire to. I think that would set good standards for sure, and what we could have in our sewing room. Of course, we all have dreams of a wonderful sewing room like yours.
Well, it's amazing how useful a sewing room is for other
Yeah.
things as well. Once you have a big workspace, it's believe me, it gets filled with all sorts of projects.
Well, it's like that even in my shop. You clear a
Mm.
workspace and have it nice and tidy, and then suddenly, oh, I'll put that there and I'll put that there, and then before you know it, you're all cluttered up again. Well, let's go into the round then, where the bias, certainly the binding issue came up, which was the pattern challenge, and as I say, it was a delightful idea, a delightful concept from the producers, because I think many a home sewer would do this. I want to make a garment for my little one. There it is, a dragon dressing gown, cotton toweling, bias binding, white and black felt for the eyes, and then the contrasting toweling for the spikes. Yes, what caused the issue was that belt, and then how many loops they had to make all the way around. So that would have taken a lot of work, because we know how hard it is turning something right side out anyway, isn't it? With your safety
Oh,
pin that you're
yeah.
pushing through. It's hard with normal fabric, let alone terry toweling. But
Yeah,
I like the
this challenge more than any others. This challenge made me realize how impossible it is to do this in
yeah,
whatever time allowance they gave them, because
four,
in the
would you
camera
believe?
goes around and they say, they say to the kids, "So what are you doing?" "Oh, well, I'm just cutting all my triangles now, and
Yeah,
I'm doing this," and everybody's relaxed and at ease, and you think, is that how you would behave if you
yeah.
had 4 hours to do
I know.
something?
But
Probably not.
look, because they all, other than the binding issue, they all managed to make it, which is incredible. And when you look at those there, don't they look cute?
Adorable.
Um, so there isn't really much to talk about from differences, because they all got the terry toweling, they all got the spikes, the colours. Yes, some of them were picked on because their eyes were too close to the back or too
Yeah.
far forward or wonky. Like that, which I thought was nitpicking a bit, but that's because they did so well. So we always say you've
Yeah.
got to have a criteria, and if eyes were their criteria, then so be it. But yes, it was the
Then,
binding, and
yeah.
and let's Tony and Fauve, Tony Beanie, which is there, and Fauve, which is there. Sadly came at the lower end. So let's take a look at, especially Tony's. Sorry, Tony. He's like, I've got highlighting where it was difficult and where he went wrong. There you go,
Oh,
Carol.
yeah,
Can you
yeah.
see that?
Yes. So you see that. So the whole of the binding is out. He's
Yeah.
he's not. It's flat now, and he's kind of stitching in the ditch, but he's got that raw edge.
Yeah.
Oh, that it's just I really felt for him, and he's got such a great sense of humor. He said, "Oh
Yeah,
no, I tried 6 or 7 different ways. Just keep looking, Patrick. You'll
that's
you'll
it.
see." See.
And we've often said, and I said this to you, right? Patterns sometimes don't say everything. So I texted viewers, I texted Carol earlier this week because I'm making my shirt and I've got it here to show you. So let's just quickly go back to this. If I get my pieces. Shirt.
Oh, beautiful. Look at
Old
that.
old
Oh, the
tablecloth.
fabric.
Isn't it
Oh, I like how you
exquisite? And then
placed the lacy bit in the center
yeah,
back. That's
the
nice.
back, centre
Oh,
back.
lovely.
How good is that going to look?
That is stunning.
So that's the front. Then the pattern says you place your pattern for the arm. So here's my arm. Let's hold this up. There you go. So that's going to be like that and run right down there. But it says you put your pattern piece. It says cut two, but it doesn't say anything else. So there's often with patterns an assumption that the sewer knows what to do, and I find that very frustrating. And I think that's kind of bad in a way. Why can't there? Yes, if you know what you're doing, cut to brilliant. But why can't there be a little asterisk saying go to page 5 if you've never done this before? Then I'd go to page 5 and it would say cut to, but flip. And this is where I had to say to Carol, I say, I don't just cut two, do I? Because if I put my pattern piece on top of 2 pieces of fabric, I'm going to end up with 2 right arms. And I know it's obvious, but I just had to check. So I sent Carol a text going, oh, do I have to turn my fabric or do I turn? And you said, what did you say to me, Carol?
I said you were absolutely right because you were saying I have to flip my pattern piece over. So what you're doing is you're cutting one pair.
Yeah.
You're cutting a pair of things. So remember,
Our opposites.
You're cutting 2, and you're cutting opposites. So when you look at it, maybe you have a front notch over here.
Yeah.
Your front notch on the other arm should be opposite to that. It can't be here. Right? Or you end up with 2 right arms. So they have to be opposite.
You see that? Our
There's
2
your notch.
notches
Yes. Yeah.
and then our 1 notch. Yeah.
Okay. So that's
But
that's why it's easier to just if you've got a big flat piece of fabric out, then you have to flip your pattern over.
Yeah.
If you have one piece of fabric that's folded, then you have right sides together, wrong sides on the outside, or vice versa. Then you can just lay your pattern piece down because your fabric is opposite each other.
But it's and Carol was lovely. She said, "I've done this many times too.
I have.
It's so easily done because you just literally the pattern says cut 2, so you cut 2 because you're not really thinking because the pattern piece says cut 2. It doesn't say be wary, cut 2, but make sure you flip it half." I know pattern
Careful.
space is money.
Want to do this.
Yeah.
Here's how it happens easily. If you have a short length of fabric and you think, I'm not sure I can get this garment out of this, so I'll cut it differently. I'll lay the fabric out in one piece, and then I'll just find it like a jigsaw, where everything fits.
That's me. Yeah.
And in that case, what you need to do is you need to copy that sleeve pattern. You need to copy it so you have 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to do that.
And then
because look, I've even written on this one piece, cut 2, and I'm actually going to scrub that out, and I'm going to put sleeve because I presume this is the right one. Is it always the right one of a pattern? They only give you one piece, don't they?
Yes? If they give you and well, the writing is where you can read the writing.
Yeah.
You can put that anywhere, but
Oh, I
it's
see.
the print side up. Print side up is going to cut one sleeve, and then
Yeah.
if you're going to cut a second one, you have to go the print side down.
Okay. So I might as well
So
just say sleeve 1 and then do another pattern piece with the opposite round and say sleeve 2. It's the
sure,
safest way, isn't it?
it is
And and
absolutely.
and as we've said before, yes, that's the preparation. It means more prep, but actually, that prep of doing 2 pattern pieces will save me probably a lot of mistakes in the future, won't it?
Absolutely. Until you get used to what's going on.
Yes.
And do the
Yeah.
same with your fronts. You need a
Yeah.
right front and a left front.
So I felt for the sewers there because I think at one point was it Vicky said, bless her, she said, well, I didn't really understand the instructions, and I felt for you, Vicky, because there probably were no instructions, or they assumed, because that's what happens, and I find that very unfair. So I felt for Vicky, felt for Fo, felt for Tony, who had never, or some of them had never done binding before, who probably then struggled with that concept of
Yeah.
what actually am I doing, where am I flipping, and then before you know it, it's gone wrong. So. But there we are.
Yeah.
You've got to have a skill, haven't you? That's what you're being assessed on, and that's how you whittle out the people who do
That's
know
it.
and who don't know, don't you?
That's the wheat from the checks.
Yeah.
That's how it happens. Yeah.
You were talking about the different styles of terry toweling, and I think you're right, because look at that toweling there. That's your toweling. That was like your washcloth there. That's proper hairy toweling. But I think Lizzie, I can't remember who else, might have chosen just by random, but I don't know whether you can see it on this long shot, but hers was almost like a
Yeah.
velvet toweling, wasn't it? There was no loops.
Yes, I thought. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A bit more fluid, a bit easier to control.
Absolutely. So
Definitely.
she
Yeah.
might not have known that at the time when she picked it, but now we looking back on it, it's almost like that smooth brushed cotton that you might have, a cat blanket or something.
Yeah. No, I
It's
think that
smooth,
that's a
isn't
very
it?
good point. Yeah, that's you raise something really interesting there, and that is they've been given the pattern so they can see the pattern, and then they say on that table over there, everyone make a run for it. Well,
Yes.
the experienced sewer is going to know already
Yeah.
because I think they were told this has got a belt, this has loops, this has all this stuff you got to do. So they're going to be thinking, I want the easiest fabric that's going to cooperate with me on this.
Yeah,
So,
and look at the size of that belt and the length of that belt. Good luck with turning that through under pressure, hey? And all
no
those
kidding.
little loops. What do you call them? Was it rouleaus? Do you call them that, or belt straps? What's the posh word for it?
Yeah, the belt. Well, belt. It's a belt loop,
Belt
isn't it?
loop. Belt loop.
Belt loop. Yeah. But
But
that's tricky.
but when you look at them, sewers, well done for doing that in
Adorable.
4 hours and
Yeah.
cutting all those spikes out, turning them and bagging them out. Oh, marvelous!
Yeah, they were all different sizes too, weren't they? They were
Yeah.
the spikes were different.
Yes.
Yeah, they had to cut. I think there were 3 different sizes.
So yes,
So
very
yeah.
very challenging project considering the time, but yeah. All did really well other than that binding. So hope the binding helped. Let's go now on. Let's have a quick flick through the final 2 rounds and let's have an analysis of those. So there's the transformation challenge. They had to, it was quite a simple one actually. So simple, Carol, they took time away from them because all they had to do, I say all, but it must be only all because it was 75 minutes to jazz up a child's denim jacket using hand-me-downs, scraps or old clothes that are now hand-me-downs. So just to jazz up, well, they're all jazzed up. There's some nice ones there, aren't there? There's some excellent ones
Oh,
too.
some beautiful ones. I mean, I felt very bad for Fauve because this was not very well judged in my opinion. She made new sleeves. She made a double set two
Yeah.
layers of new sleeves, two collars, and a skirt. And she had what I would call the most successful transformation. And I felt very bad because I think the judging was way off the mark on this one. Where
I
you
agree.
had, um, I think Tony, who does some lovely work, his was a simple applique.
Yeah.
And I think he came in second to Lizzie, who did a lovely transformation as well. But it didn't have the work, or the
No.
engineering,
No.
or the complete change that Fauve um, accomplished. And I didn't get that. I was, why?
Uh, and in
Why did they
75
miss? Why
minutes.
did the judges miss that? Yeah, but
Yeah.
why did they miss that? Why did the judges not see all the work that had gone into Fauve's?
I well, when they said the criteria and they said they got to jazz it up, Esme said at the end, but one thing it needs to be, it has to be exciting. I don't know whether that led their criteria more, and the whole idea of jazzing up, they lost the idea of the transformation challenge, which is balmy because the transformation challenge is about transforming something. But actually,
Yes,
well, you
yes.
didn't want them to transform it. You just wanted them to jazz it up. So I think they almost forgot about the skills and then ended up with just the jazzing up side. So yeah, they got completely the wrong criteria almost.
Yes, almost, yes. But
Whereas
I think Lizzie did a really lovely job, a
oh
real lovely
yes.
story. But so go back. You were circling Fauve's for a
Oh
reason.
no, I was just circling, saying all the techniques she did, but maybe there wasn't enough jazzing up. So yes, in any other week, it was a huge transformation, but in the judges' eyes, perhaps it wasn't as jazzed up. But yes, when you look at
Yeah,
Lauren's there, look at her
yeah.
patchwork back, and then as you say, Lizzie's too, her back with the roller skates.
Charming. Yeah, and I like the way she just cut the sleeves off and rolled them up. I mean, that's what you would wear if you were out, roller
Yeah.
skating. You'd want less around your neck. You'd want short sleeves. You want to be cooler.
Yes.
So the whole thing made sense, didn't it?
Yeah. But maybe that's what it was. So in a way, Fove did all that work to transform it, but actually she didn't need to transform it. She just needed to jazz it up, which seems, oh God, such a shame because it was so transformed. Weird in a way,
Yeah.
isn't it?
I mean, it was a more sober transformation or jazz, but she did have
Yeah,
the silver collar on there. Maybe she used a little bit more silver. Maybe
yeah.
that would have brought it into the jazzier genre.
Who knows when we're talking the judges there, what goes through their minds when they're evaluating. Sometimes we agree, sometimes more times we don't. Bless them. Let's move on to the made to measure. The made to measure. Oh look who we've got there. The made to measure was they had to make occasion wear for a 5-year-old. And that was that. So quite a wide brief because the occasion could be anything. It
Yes.
could be a
Yeah.
party. It could be going to I think going shopping or going to the church, as some of them said. Who have we got there showing? That's Foves.
That's Fauve. And I think Fauve was one of two that said, I'm going to make something that I was never allowed to wear myself,
Oh
which I thought was really,
yes,
really sweet.
yeah. It was hard challenge because they've got to it's made to measure. It's got to fit. But this is where actually we go full circle because this is what you said at the beginning. A little toddler there's no shape. It is shoulders, hips, and waist. It's like a tube almost, as you said.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this particular crossover pattern is, I think, it's interesting because the trousers look like the girth is right, but something's gone wrong with the way that top was put together, and maybe the
Yeah.
crossover wasn't far enough over to bring the shoulders in more.
Yes, because
I don't know
blessed,
what went wrong, but
they
it's
were
so pretty. It's a
almost,
really lovely the combination of florals and stripes.
yeah.
It was just so nicely designed, and it was such a shame that something went wrong in the bodice.
Oh, is that not kind of similar to your one? Where was your one? Uh, uh, let's do fauve there. Oh, look, yeah, in a way,
Yes, it is. You know, it is. Yes, mine is sleeveless,
yeah,
and the trousers are a little wider. But you're right. Yes, exactly. It's got that high waist, crossover bodice. It's got a bow. That's
yeah,
true. Yeah. But you see how close those shoulders are in mine to the neck.
yes,
Um,
yeah,
so I don't
yeah.
know. I don't know what could have gone wrong for her.
Well, that's
Bless. Oh well.
the thing about the program, isn't it? You might have been chatting, and bless Fove, she talked to us all the time. I will miss her because she had her little chats to the camera and to Sarah. We got more of her personality, whereas some of the other sewers were perhaps concentrating more, didn't talk so much. Bless Asma, when I think the crew went up to her, she went, I can't talk now. I'm too busy. Because she must have. That would have been me. I'm too stressed. But Fove was a really good on screen there.
She was the best stand-up comic in the whole of the
Yeah,
workroom, and I think
absolutely.
I'm gonna miss her impressions. She did
Absolutely.
her French accent, her Irish accent. It was
That's
spot
it.
on.
Let's go down. Let's carry on through. Look through them. So we've now got Asthmas. No.
Dude, really dreamy, very
Oh,
dreamy.
isn't it? And now, can you tell us about this, the amazing rolled hem? How
Yes,
hard would that
yes.
have been? Was that organza or tulle? What was that bottom
So
bit?
I think it was organza, and I'm not sure, but I think that was a square with a
Right.
circle cut out for the waist. So I think it was a handkerchief hem.
Oh,
So it's
that's
four
it. Yeah,
points. But
yeah,
yeah, but what she did, Asma just fed it through the rolled hem
yeah.
stitch on her own. So she put in a contrast thread, and she would have been working on the straight of grain, the straight or the cross grain, not
Ah,
the
right.
bias. So the machine would have taken it, given it a nice clean edge. It would have been very stable. So that worked out really well for her.
Clever.
The bodice is a little too long. It's a little too
Yes.
wide. So I think if anything, if she was marked down on anything, this would have been fit because it
Yeah,
was a made to measure.
yeah. Wonderful. Let's go to Lauren's. Delightful number. Peter Pan collar. That lovely ditzy print, like a Liberty ditzy print.
This is so beautiful. And it grew in width with the
Yeah.
gathering, the tiers of her skirt. And she did that lovely twirl at
Wasn't
the
it
end of the
lovely?
catwalk,
Came
and
to
it
life.
just showed all the
Absolutely.
fullness. And a crisp white blouse and that lovely puff sleeve with the ruffle just around the top of the arm.
Yeah.
Just beautifully done. I know she had a problem with the height of the bodice underneath the white
Well,
pleated section with the
that bit
buttons.
there.
Yeah, something went wrong there where it wasn't matched. The curves weren't matched. It wasn't tucked up enough
Ah.
into that seam, so she had that. It was too tall there in the bodice, and I think that she got called up for that, didn't she?
I do really like Lauren. I do like watching her. She's very calm and chilled as well. She's a bit like Tony Beanie, and there's just something
Yeah.
about her. I think I'd like her in my final four. I think now. Something about her. It's some, when you just can't quite. You just think I just like watching you, and I like listening to you, and I like what you make.
Yeah,
Then we've got.
Okay,
Go
go
on.
ahead.
No, go
Go
on.
ahead.
You go. No, you carry on.
No, I was thinking when you were just saying that I had a thought when I was watching it the other night, and I thought now is where you can tell who's getting a little bit tired, a little bit weary, and who is putting the pedal to the metal.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
you can sense they're used to working under pressure, and this isn't going to bother them. In fact, they're going to get a real buzz out of it. Where there are other contestants, so I don't want to name any names at the moment
No,
because
I
I made some
understand.
notes, and
Yeah.
I want to see if this works out the way I think it's going to work out. But having taught and tutored and mentored and judged competitions and had so much, large projects on with students over the years, this just hit home with me. Ah, this person is getting tired, sort of running out of ideas, having
Yeah.
trouble. Things are getting harder for them, and so it's going to be interesting to see what happens
All
in
right,
the
we'll
next
come
half.
back to that maybe on week 10, and you can
Yep.
say, I thought it was this person.
Yeah.
Now, this, I don't know about you, but this was my favourite, and it probably shouldn't have been, but
Oh,
there's something about Christmas. I think there was everything about this just worked. Delightful. What did you think?
it fit. I loved it too. It fit beautifully.
Doesn't it?
I love the bodice on the bias,
Yeah.
perfectly centered. But then it gets distorted when you gather it up. So when I saw it in that first tier, so you've got a bias tier, and then a red tier, and then
Yeah.
another one, and that, for me, I would have loved to have seen a big red sash or something right there, because
Yeah.
that beautiful, nice, clean bodice, and then it got a bit distorted for me.
So this
And
is what I think. So are you saying a red band there like that?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I would have thought that would have helped balance it out, or a different kind of a trim on the hem of the two bias tiers,
What
so something
on
else.
the bottom one? Because
Yeah,
I think
yeah, and
this is where I didn't agree with the judges, because I think the judges wanted something on that tier, didn't they? A red
yeah.
on
See,
there,
I
and
would
I
have
was like,
put, yeah, no, not red, but maybe a deep green, maybe a velvet or something, because to me
oh,
it was a bit bright for Christmas. You had the
okay,
deep red, but the green was a little, for me, is a little watery. Didn't really say Christmas.
yeah, you want
But I think if it
that
was
crisp velvet on
yes,
that one
yes, yeah,
and
and on
on
the
that
bottom
one.
maybe as
Oh
well.
yeah,
Yes.
now look at that.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
But Mia's,
revel.
she's a very safe designer. She's a very safe technician with her ideas, and I think
But
she could do with,
uh,
yeah,
yeah, taking a few more risks.
yes, I think
Yeah,
so. I think she's going to need to.
yeah. But look at that fit, as we say, that it's made to measure for a reason, and she
It's
got it.
perfect.
Absolutely got it.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
and then we've got Vicky.
Now I really, really like this one.
There's something quite clever about these sleeves. I really
Hmm.
enjoyed this
Definitely.
technique.
Yeah.
What that is.
Hmm. Yeah. I did she shear that with an elastic thread?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and she said it was like sewing air. Now this had a high degree of difficulty. With she had the line bodice, which didn't come out perfect, and the overlock seam. That's a very simple matter of just turning the seam allowance inside. So
Yeah.
that shouldn't have been picked on the way it was, because that could have been remedied really easily. But the way she got the volume in it, and then these practically sheer sleeves and the pin tucks. I thought this was a very, very
Yeah.
good effort.
And again, when the model spun, did you see it balloon out? It
Yes.
was lovely. Yeah.
Took flight. Yeah.
That's it. And then let's finish off with Tony Beanie, which got Garment of the Week. What did you think?
I really liked that. When he said he was going to use scuba, I thought, oh, all right, let's see. This will be interesting. But it was the magic of those pleats, the
Oh,
pleats into the waist, where everyone else got their volume with gathers.
yeah.
He had these great big box pleats in, and
Stunning.
then the box pleats in the bow, on either side of the bow,
Yeah.
two box pleats there. And it was very, like Esme said, it was different. It was, it was it was different. It was risky,
Yeah.
and it worked beautifully. And in its purity, the
Yeah.
white, very easy style, and then that little ring of rhinestones.
I gotta say that delicate, right size, Could there have been a few more? I don't know. I think that was probably just right.
Yeah,
I don't know whether I would have seen
yeah, beautiful.
it.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just worked. You don't see a bow in the front of a dress like that,
No.
but somehow it worked. Somehow the sculpture worked, so the color worked.
And I
It
think
all came together.
that's the scuba there talking. I don't think it wouldn't have
Yeah,
worked with any other material because the bow would have gone like that, wouldn't it?
yeah, yeah,
Wouldn't have held
yeah.
its
It would have
form.
flopped.
But
Yeah, yeah.
this is what we were talking about with Tony. Pencil behind his ear. That measurement. He's good with numbers and following things to a precision. Look at that pleat, dead in the middle, the centre of
Yeah.
that bow.
Yes.
It
Yes.
is mastery,
It's
that,
all.
isn't it?
Yeah. It's so well lined up, and it really shows the sculpture and the way the light plays on it.
Yeah.
It really gives it such an amazing, depth to it, even though it's a solid color and it just
Yeah.
really, it worked. And I love the length. We talked about how the torso is often taller than the legs, but he got that just right. There's
Yeah.
just enough legs showing with the little lacy socks
Yeah.
and her white shoes and practically white hair as well.
Oh, it's stunning all round, isn't it? Yeah, and of course he got garment of the week with that, and understandably because it wasn't nice to see something different. But and you say taking a
Yes.
risk. Not every amateur sewer, home sewer sews. I've never sewn with scuba or neoprene. Is it something that we're seeing more coming through? Do you have you? How much have you sewn with scuba
I
wise?
do. Well, it's interesting. You and I went to McCulloch and Wallace in central London a while back, and you did a lovely video of that. And I've seen going in there, I see more and more scuba.
Oh,
So,
really?
and they usually, yeah, they get the ends, of the collection. So,
Yeah.
so the designers are out there using it in the collection. I've not seen it because I don't shop for those kinds of things, but certainly I see a lot of bolts on the shelves in fabric stores. So it's around.
Well, maybe we'll see more and more, and maybe I'll have to have a go at sewing it. But next week, I will be wearing a shirt with a left arm and a right arm, which will be lovely. I know we talk, and we've said this right from the beginning. We do analyse and we critique the sewing bee, and some people say, "Oh, you should just watch it and enjoy it." Well, we do enjoy it, but we also enjoy critiquing our craft and being able to talk to fellow sewers in such detail. And I've said this many times before. I remember my brother and my dad always doing this after a football match and being quite envious of the fact that I didn't really play football and then couldn't enjoy and join in with that discussion. They would talk after watching Norwich City play and losing. They would talk for about an hour afterwards about who should have hit that shot, who should have done this, when the manager should have taken him off or moved him up front or pulled him back. And there is something quite enjoyable about a discussion about a craft or a sport or anything that you love with people. And that's why we do this programme, because we don't often get the opportunities to see sewing on telly and then being able to talk about it. So that is what this show's about. And it is lovely to talk about our craft and share skills, share tips and be inspired. And that's the most important thing. I know we moan about the judges and the criteria, but it still inspires us to make and talk and share. And so many of you in the comments are wanting to do the same. It's lovely, isn't it, Carol?
Well, we wanted to do this show because we wanted to decode and demystify what wibbly wobbly was and all over the shop, and
Yes.
that's a really bad job. And
Yeah.
I was getting a bit dispirited when I saw, because the show seemed to get more and more other than
Yes.
just helping people with technique. What I want to do, is I want to show people how, with a little bit of patience and preparation and setting things up, that you can improve hugely and very fast if you just learn a few of the techniques. I stumbled through this, for 40 years. I want to help people get better. And the show should be more about that, I think. And also, when I disagree with the way something is done, it's only to point out the really good effort that's been missed.
Absolutely.
And sometimes,
Yes. Yeah.
Bright colors and feathers and all that, they distract, and everyone goes, ooh, ah.
Yeah.
But sometimes, and with our fauve today, bless her, we're going to miss her. But she did put a lot of work in,
Yeah.
and they could at least say that. They could say, we wanted it jazzy. This has been beautifully done.
Yeah.
More work is put into this, more thought's been put into this than most of these others. But it just didn't, it didn't ring any
Yeah.
bells really. So, and that's what we'd like. We'd like the judges to follow through on the criteria that they set.
Absolutely, yeah, and it would then perhaps stop many people at home swearing and throwing a slipper or two at the TV. But most importantly, we come back for more, and you come back for more, and you join us here on YouTube, and you put in all the comments and everything. Now, next week we're going to try and do a live one. We're going to be live. How exciting is that, Carol? Are you ready for it?
Yep. Totally. Yep. Absolutely.
So tune in at 8:00. We're going to aim to be at 8:00. If we're there 5 minutes past, 10 minutes past, we will be there and we will be live. So we'll be talking to you in the comments live. If you're there watching, you can obviously still watch on record and later on as normal. But if you're not doing anything at 8 p.m. next Thursday, you can join us live because it's 90s week. We don't fully know what topics are going to be because we wait and see what comes up in the show, but we can start getting an idea. 90s week, it's this idea of what the early, do we call them a glamour, the glamour model? Is it Liz Hurley and her safety pin dress? Can you remember that?
I think it's going to be a bit of Versace and things like that. Yeah, Dolce & Gabbana, the big fashion houses, the big couture projects, the daring catwalk garments. I think yes. I think I'm getting a little bit of picture now.
So it will be exciting to see, but we'll be back doing some sort of demo, but more importantly, live chat there. So you can try putting a question to Carol, and you never know, we might be able to give you a live answer too. It's going to be scary but exciting, isn't it?
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be great. It's going to be really good fun. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all your lovely comments that you put. They are very valued. We read them. We try when we get time to answer them. If we don't answer them, we try and answer them in the show, which I think we've certainly done today with the binding. It's been wonderful. So look forward to seeing you next week for 90s Week. Thanks, Carol. And we'll see you live.
Stuart.
Can't wait. Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.